Welcome to the One Shot Movie Stop series. I'm your host, Tom Rinaldi, and today we're joined by Xavier Warner, and today's movie is Batman Begins. First off, Xavier, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Happy with the way the first one turned out. I'm here back to do another one.
If you haven't already watched it, we did Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse for our first video, and we're looking to go on further with this series. And the next stop in this series is Batman Begins, Christopher Nolan's take of the Batman lore and saga. This was right after everything that happened with the Joel Schumacher
Yeah.
Batmans that were very campy. You have Batman and Robin where you get lines like "Ice to meet you," with Arnold Schwarzenegger and stuff like that.
So bad. But I liked it though. Like it was bad, but I enjoyed the movies. Like it
I
was
mean,
kind of
being a
fun.
kid, it's like, oh yeah, this is fun, and then you grow up
Yeah.
and you're like, oh,
Why did I even
so
try? You cringe.
yeah. But like I said, this is directed by Christopher Nolan. It was made in 2005. It was produced by Warner Brothers, as all DC comics movies are.
Yeah.
It is starring Christian Bale, Michael Caine, and Liam Neeson. And the score is composed by Hans Zimmer.
Beast.
Uh,
Beast.
he's one of the best of all
Beast.
time. He's,
Beast.
in my opinion, right below John Williams for best composer.
That's an argument we can have
Hey,
on another
hey,
episode for
who
sure.
knows? Who knows?
Because-
Um, but like I was saying, this is coming off of a time where Batman was really getting tiresome because of those Joel Schumacher and Tim Burton movies that we grew to love when we were in it. But as time went along, we kind of saw where things could be improved and how things could get more grounded. And I think that's something Christopher Nolan really did. If you don't mind giving a quick synopsis of this movie.
Um, Pretty much, young kid, parents are murdered brutally in an alley. He couldn't do anything to stop them. It haunts him for the rest of his life, and that's an ongoing theme throughout the movie. He grows up, decides to leave Gotham and do some soul searching, as you would say. That's where we kind of pick up with him at. And, he meets Ra's al Ghul.
Mhm.
Goes to the training to be in the League of Shadows. He eventually goes back to Gotham to find his rightful place in Pride Rock. Kind of a Lion King theme there, low key,
Hey,
kind of though.
I
Like I
see
was
it.
thinking about it when I was watching the movie. I was like, yo, I was like, Simba kind of like went off on his own, like, got trained by people, came back, and took his like kingdom back. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
From
Hey.
someone who was destroying it, from the inside out.
Hmm.
Batman, Bruce Wayne becomes Batman. We get a training montage. We get to see how he makes a suit, all that stuff. He fights villains. He, saves the day. We'll get all into that stuff in a couple
Of
minutes,
course.
but that's the synopsis. Classic superhero.
Yeah, this is your typical origin story that you get, and it's something that we've seen a ton going back into '89 Batman and a bunch of other things that we've watched in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think this is one of the better portrayals of his origin story. You get to see him as a little kid, and really what brings him to all of this is the fear of falling down that well and seeing the bats.
Mm-hmm.
And that fear leads to guilt. That guilt leads to him becoming a vigilante. And I think this is a really good job of doing that.
Yeah.
But first, before we go into our thoughts on the movie, I'd like to go into the cast and the characters. First off, we have Christian Bale as Batman and Bruce Wayne. He was actually the youngest Batman to date to do Batman, and I think he does a killer job.
Yeah. He's great.
Michael Caine plays
Dope.
Alfred Pennyworth in this, and
Dope.
again, I think he's one of the best, if not the best, Alfred that we've seen on screen, whether it's cartoon, live action, anything of that nature.
Yeah, he's elite, bro. He's elite.
All the way through. Uh, Next, we have the villain, Liam Neeson, who plays Ra's al Ghul and Ducard. This is one of his roles right before Taken and all that, showing that he's a powerhouse. He has been for many years, and he brings it to this movie.
The good thing about Liam Neeson is he can play so many different roles inside of a role. I think he's a really well-rounded actor. And Ra's al Ghul, the character, fits in perfectly because he can do so many different things.
Yeah, you have the action side of him, which you get in things like Taken, and you also get that psychological part that Ra's al Ghul plays into, and I think Liam Neeson does a really nice job of that.
Yeah.
In this particular movie, Rachel is played by Katie Holmes, And I think she brings a nice heartfelt thing
Yeah.
to what Bruce Wayne needs.
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne is this hotshot billionaire,
Playboy.
could get any girl he wants, but Rachel has his heart. And I
Yeah.
think she does a good job of playing his heart and telling the heart, telling the mind of what you should and shouldn't do and things of that nature. The
Yeah.
other villain in this movie is Crane and Scarecrow, played by Cillian Murphy. That's one of Christopher Nolan's go-to people. Same with Michael Caine. He brings a intellect to this role that Crane is supposed to have, and I think he does a very good job with it as well.
Yeah.
We get the legendary in this movie Sergeant Gordon. He becomes Commissioner Gordon later on by Gary Oldman. It's
Best.
kind of his year one, as long as Batman's year one when he's younger. I think it's a
Yeah.
nice juxtaposition that we get to see.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
And last on my list is Lucius Fox, played by Morgan Freeman, the voice of God, the reasoning of everything that's happening,
Everything. He's
not
the
just
man.
in A Bruce Almighty, but in Batman Begins. Uh, to round out this cast and characters, I think this cast, I'm not surprised to see it from a Christopher Nolan movie. Obviously, he puts a lot of detail into who he puts into his roles, but everybody brings it. And I think
Yeah.
that's why this movie is so strong.
I agree. I mean, like from top to bottom, when you're talking about Katie Holmes, I mean, I feel like she always plays that softer like person in movies. So she fits perfectly to that role of Rachel,
Mm-hmm.
being that counteractive to, to the injustice, to the, to the Batman side of Bruce Wayne. You get the softer side, which he needs in specific moments in this movie, which we'll get to in a second. But like the cast does a really good job. Cillian Murphy's also really, really good in that Scarecrow role. Like he makes me scared while I was watching the movie. I was like, yo, this dude's crazy. Like I gotta get out of here. But
Mm-hmm.
like those little choices like make the movie better because your top actors, Christian Bale, Michael Caine, they're Liam Neeson, they're gonna do what they're gonna do. If you're second string actors, I'm just talking about outside
Yeah.
the leads, also play past their potential, then you get a great movie like you got here. It really shows that means something, honestly.
Yeah, despite being in the movies for a short amount of time, they do their part, and that's really
Yeah.
important. And like you're saying, it's what makes a good movie into a great movie.
Yeah.
Um, one thing before we move on to our thoughts about this movie is a character choice that has been divisive since it came out, and that's Christian Bale's Bat voice. Um, a lot of people think it sounds like weird Scooby-Doo. A lot of people actually like it, me included. I think it actually fits the character. What do you think about that Bat voice?
I am indifferent. I don't hate it. I don't love it. Like it's not. I don't think it's the best absolute choice for it, but I don't
Mhm.
absolutely don't think it's the worst either. I like it. Like it's good. It's solid. I have no complaints about it really in my
For
eyes.
me, I always go into the College Humor videos of Badman, played by Pete Holmes, and him trying to find his voice and all that stuff. I think it's hilarious. So every time I
Yeah.
watch these series of movies, I kind of giggle, but then it also reminds me of uh, the Batman I truly did grow up with,
Yeah.
thankfully, and I think it's a really good choice. All right, so now onto the thoughts of this movie. As we said, we really enjoyed this movie, and we think it's a really good origin story. What do you? What are your overall thoughts about Batman Begins?
I think it's if we're looking at origin movies and we're looking at movies that can stand the test of time. I mean, this has to be up there. I was watching it today, and I've seen it a good amount of times. Probably I would say definitely over 20 times I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
So like I know what the movie's about. I can look away and still know what's going on the screen just by listening to it.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at the total package and being able to like its rewatchability, I think it's
Mm-hmm.
got to be up there in the top. 1, 2, 3 of origin stories. Like just from a movie franchise that had more than one or two movies.
Yes.
Like this had 3 movies. Like you're always competing with the sequel. We will get to the sequel next week, but you're always competing with that sequel, which can arguably be one of the best, which could arguably be the best superhero movie of all time. And then
Mm-hmm.
you have the third movie with the villain that it had and what Batman had to go to. That's a great movie, which I haven't seen that movie in a while. I can't wait to watch it again. But
Yeah, me too.
so like it has to be up there for me. So I love everything about this movie. This
Yeah.
is one of my favorite superhero movies because Batman's a great character because he doesn't have superpowers and we don't have to
Hmm.
worry about him flying and using his super speed to do everything. Like he has to do it the hard way, and we can make jokes about Batman and his
Yeah.
his ability to be, but like his movies are very watchable. So I love this movie.
Something that we touched on last week is the suit up scene, and something that this movie does really well is showing his process of becoming Batman.
Yeah,
And that's something that we don't typically get to see because, like I said earlier, this is kind of a year one Batman. And getting to see him struggle fighting some people, getting to see him become a detective, become something stronger, become the combat person that we know him to be.
yeah,
It's not like we're jumping into his 5th, 10th, 20th year into that Batman role into Gotham. We have to see him have to deal with the cops. We get to see him
yeah,
have to deal with doing things for the first time. And I think that's something that's really interesting. This is Batman's comeback, like I said earlier. The 60s Batman was very campy. You have boom, pow, and all that fun stuff. And then you get the darkness that you get with the Tim Burton Batmans. And a lot of people were turned off by that darkness because you have Oswald Cobblepot foaming from the mouth and a bunch of
yeah,
other interesting. I personally like those movies, but I get where some people are coming from.
yeah,
And then because of that, you get that transition into the Joel Schumacher Batmans, where you get Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, and those go back to the campiness, and it's weird and it's vibrant and colorful. And then Christopher Nolan brings it to a grounded movie.
yeah,
Uh, the stakes feel real. The characters feel real. It doesn't feel like it's out of left field. It feels like a crime
mhm,
thriller, and it just so happens to be Batman. And I
yeah,
think that's why this movie and this trilogy really holds with the audiences and is revered so highly.
yeah. I agree.
This is a story based on fear. Fear from the beginning, him being a little kid, being
Yeah,
scared of bats, being scared at the play, that fear leading up to his parents' death, taking that fear and trying to grow on it, using that fear to hold villains and criminals down, and justice through fear. Um, this is something that we're going to see through each of this trilogy. This movie centered on fear, the other on anarchy, and so on and so forth. What do you think about the fear element within this movie?
I think it's perfect. I think for the character of Batman, that's the only way that you can go. And I think
Mhm.
Christian Bale, I think oh my goodness. That's what happens when you draw. I said Christian Bale. I think Christopher Nolan really invoked that really, really well. Like when you
Mhm.
think of Batman, you think of dark, you think of, menacing, you think of the voice, you think of those things that are scary to you. So invoking fear from the very beginning with him falling into the pit, like in a time of joy, they're running around having fun, and then it's immediate that he's in pain, shock, anguish, confusion, like a bunch of negative emotions with all those bats flying around. So then translating that through the movie, through his fear, like you said, and holding people down, and the justice, and it growing through that fear,
Mhm.
it allows you to connect the dots a lot easier. And I think that's what makes this movie really, really good as well.
Yeah, and watching this movie again, it made me realize how good this movie really is. In the past, I really held The Dark Knight to the standard I believe it should be. And I always put this movie down, not realizing on this watch through how good it really is. My only complaint of this movie is that sometimes it gets a little slow paced and repetitive.
Yeah,
But other than that, it's good on its themes. It's good on a character standpoint. Some of the shots are gorgeous. The music is really good. As a collective, it's one of the better superhero movies and movies in general, I believe. I think Christopher Nolan did a really good job with this.
yeah, I think that this should be notable, honestly, because if you look at The Dark Knight,
Mhm.
like The Dark Knight is only good, not okay, okay, it's not only good for this, but just let
Yeah,
me spin
I
let
got
me
you. I
spin my
got you.
narrative. All right, guys, let me spin my narrative. The Dark Knight is only as good as Batman Begins was. If Batman Begins didn't set up Batman, well, Bruce Wayne, young Bruce Wayne, old Bruce Wayne, Batman, Alfred, like all those moving pieces, like between family and the Wayne Manor being rebuilt, all that stuff that kind of led to that. If that wasn't there,
Mhm.
there's no way that we get the Dark Knight because we don't get that same Batman. Like that
Yeah.
Batman was had gone through a lot of things in his life, and it wasn't even the most things he's gone through yet. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Because this movie was about to take him on a whole nother trip. So I think when we mention the Dark Knight, we should also mention Batman Begins, at least as like a little like side notation,
Yeah,
like
for sure.
like give it a
This is
little
the
note.
movie that gives you the setting, it gives you the context of the characters, it gives you what the overall tone is going to be, and it sets you up so that the Dark Knight could live on its own in its own way, and you don't
Yeah,
have to explain things within the Dark Knight. You could just go right into the action.
yeah,
And it's not just a good setup movie, but it's a good standalone movie as well.
hmm,
I think if you just take it for what it is, people would love this movie. And if it didn't come out with a sequel or a trilogy, thankfully it
yeah,
did, it would still hold its own, kind of like Star Wars did originally.
yeah,
The original Star Wars, A New Hope, when it came out, there wasn't planned for a sequel. But because it was so good as a standalone, George Lucas was able to make Empire Strikes Back, with which a lot of people revere as the top Star Wars movie.
yeah.
So I think it's kind of linear in that same thought process.
Agreed.
Going on to the next point is favorite moments within this movie. There's a ton of iconic moments. There's a ton of really fun moments within this movie. Great action scenes. What are some of your favorite moments within this?
So I like the funny moments in this movie more than the action and like the build up because I know the
Mhm.
Batman story, obviously. So I don't get excited when I see the Batman like
Yeah.
origin story. I don't get excited when I see different things. So I like the scenes that are unique to, the portrayal of the Batman character. So I like the hotel scene
Yeah.
when he's in there with a bunch of people, and they're all hanging out. He has two girls and then they go swimming in the pool.
Mhm.
And instead of like, jumping in with them right away or like he had to make a smart ass comment. He
Of
had
course.
to. Hey, you know what? I'm just gonna buy this hotel. Like, don't worry about it. Like, we're gonna
Yeah.
change the rules around here. And
The
then
ultimate
still,
billionaire move, the ultimate Bruce Wayne move, honestly.
yeah,
Bruce Wayne being he's cocky. Let's be honest. He's a cocky person. He knows who
absolutely,
he is, but that's, to me, it's almost a ruse because he's playing Bruce Wayne because he wants to be Batman. He
yeah,
has to be this cocky person. He has to divert, and they kind of show it into this movie, divert attention away from Batman by being Bruce Wayne, and I think that's really interesting.
yeah. I like that point a lot. That makes like that. I thought of it like that, but I didn't think of it about that in that much depth. So like the way you put it, that makes perfect sense. Like he has to do these things to be able to do those other things like
Mhm.
successfully. I like
And
that.
an example of that scene, other than this hotel scene, is when he confronts Gordon uh, in the precinct for the first time, and he has a stapler to the back of his head. He said, "There's
Mhm,
two of us," and I believe, and I could be taking this out of context, he means Bruce Wayne and Batman.
mhm,
That he's fighting as both of these people and
mhm,
not
mhm.
just as one entity. So
I like
I
that,
think it's an
Tyler.
interesting point. Thank
I
you.
like that. I like that. What's
Uh,
well, I
one
have
of
one
my
more.
favorites. Oh, go ahead,
I think
please.
I have one. Yeah. No, let's go every other one. So you go.
Okay. One of my favorite scenes is the fight on ice that he has with Ra's al Ghul in the beginning of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
You get to see why Ra's is such a good villain. He's training Batman only to beat him later on, and it's really trying to utilize him within his own scheme, but adjusting as he needs to. But you also get to see how Batman becomes a tactician. Batman's known for making a plan and executing that plan to perfection. And you see him try to go for the kill shot instead of thinking about every possible thing that
Possible.
could go
Yeah.
wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing him take that and evolve that into saving Roz and everything like that. That scene of him sliding down as a building explodes and
Yeah.
catching it with the armor and holding
Oh
on to him
my
and
God,
pulling him
his
up.
arm, his.
That's a scene of Captain America holding on
Yeah.
to the helicopter and holding on to the building before that. And I think it's a really
But
strong
this is.
scene. It's one of the undertone scenes of this movie.
I agree. And that's him without any powers. Like he doesn't have any
Yeah.
boost. Like
There's no
that's just
super
him.
serum. He's
Just
not a super
like
soldier. He's just a savage,
that's
honestly.
crazy, bro. He's a savage.
What's your second moment?
What did I write down? Oh, so I like the moment when Alfred and Bruce were on the plane
Hmm.
and they were talking about, the Wayne Enterprises, like all the transaction stuff like that. And Bruce Wayne says something, and I'm not going to be 100% accurate with this, but I'm going to spark notes it, so just work with me, guys. He said something like, uh, well, good thing I left all my things to you.
Hmm.
And then Alfred goes, oh, yeah, I'll let you, you can borrow the Rolls Royce or something like that if you need it. And then, like, Bruce Wayne laughs. But, like, that tells you, like, and that's such a small thing. Like, and I'm not a filmmaking student. I didn't go to school for filmmaking. I just like movies.
Yeah.
And I like understanding complexities of those movies. But that's a small little snippet, but it allows you to dive more into their relationship. They can joke. You in this scene, in this moment, you understand more that Bruce loves Alfred with all of his heart. If he left
Hmm.
everything to him, he values him and respects him to the utmost degree, right? If he
Hmm.
left everything to him, everything, and like it's not like he's leaving him if I left something to like my mom, I'm not leaving him. Like I'm leaving my PlayStation and an iMac. Like I'm
Yeah.
not leaving anything crazy, right? But he's leaving millions and millions of possession stocks, whatever you want to say, right?
Yeah.
And Alfred doesn't like act like he absolutely knows. Like he's not like, oh yeah, I do have that stuff. But he's just like he plays it really, really smooth because they have that relationship where they can joke and they can mess like, oh yeah, you can borrow the Rolls Royce if you need it, man. Like don't worry about it. Like I think
Yeah.
that allows you to take another peek into their relationship just from two lines of verbiage. So that's one
And
of my favorite.
two things with that is that plays into Alfred being his overall protector. As much as Batman is the protector of Gotham, Alfred is the protector of Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
And you
And
see
that's
that as
more
a
important.
kid. You see that as a kid, and you see that as Batman. He treats him as a doctor, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
He does all this stuff, and it is really nice to see that playful banter between the two because they have this chemistry where they know they could if it weren't for Alfred, Batman is not a thing.
Yeah,
And
facts.
that's important to show because they're perfect together.
Yeah,
They're
you need to
the
show
perfect dynamic
vulnerabilities.
duo.
You need to show vulnerabilities
Yeah.
in Batman, like so, like, and you can only do that through Bruce Wayne. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? And you show the compassion side with Katie Holmes, with Rachel, but like you need to show like every side, and Alfred hits every single one of those. Like he can be, like you said, the doctor. He's a friend. He's like a father figure. He's a butler still. You know what I'm saying? Like he's still all those different things for him, in spite of him being that. Him being the most important thing to Gotham, if you want to say.
Yeah. And it also foreshadows the ending of uh, Bruce Wayne comes back into power because of Alfred holding all of his assets.
Uh-huh.
He's now able to buy back his assets and become the owner of Wayne Enterprise once again. And you get to see that play out at the end. And I think that's a really nice line of him talking to, I believe it's Earl. And then
Yeah.
Lucius gets his, did you get the memo at the very end too? And I thought that
That's
was a great
funny.
line.
Yeah, that's great.
One of the scenes I also really liked in this movie was when Rachel is about to take Bruce to Carmine Falcone into
Mhm.
his bar area,
Well,
and she's
outside,
explaining to him,
outside at night, right?
yes,
Okay, yeah.
she's driving him there, and in the car ride there, she explains the difference between justice and revenge, and I thought that was a really poignant thing that she really harks on during it. And she says you have to look beyond your own pain and going for revenge just to obtain justice for the bigger picture and the greater good of Gotham. This isn't just about you. Gotham is in its lowest state. And if you're going to make change, you have to make change for the bigger picture and not just to get revenge on the mob and Joe Chill and everything
Yeah.
along with that. Um,
I actually
yeah,
wrote down in the notes of like as we're watching the movie, I
yeah.
wrote the quote that she said in the car because it really stuck out to me. She said, "What chance does Gotham have if the good people do nothing?" Like I thought that was really like
That's
I
a really
rewinded it.
strong line. Yeah, I watched that scene two,
Yeah,
3 times in my viewing of it.
it's really good.
She says another really important line, and she says justice is about harmony, and
Mhm.
you can't be justice by your lonesome. And that kind of speaks to Batman as a character. As much as he wants to be that lone wolf, he
Yeah.
has connections with Gordon. He has connections with the DA. He has connections with the underworld of Gotham. He has connections with Alfred. As much as he thinks he's this lone entity bringing justice to the city of Gotham every night, he has these role characters, Lucius Fox as well, to get him to that level of being who he can be. And I think that was a really interesting point that Rachel brought up in that scene.
Yeah, agreed. I'm glad we agreed on that, man. I like that scene a lot. It was a good
Me
scene.
too.
It's a good scene. So we talked about one of my favorite lines.
Yes.
What are some of your favorite lines, man?
I have a couple in here. I always get chills when he goes out as Batman in the suit for the first time.
Yeah.
And he's going to the place where Carmine is unloading the medicine and everything like that Crane is going to use as Scarecrow. Mm-hmm. And one of the henchmen says, "Where are you?" And he says, "Here." And it's so good. He just drops down and he's right behind him. And then later on in that scene, he goes into Carmine's car and he says, "I'm Batman." And that's exactly what we want. And growing up as a kid that really loved Batman the animated series, you get I am the Knight, I am vengeance, I am Batman. And it kind of does that as like a little nod to the past, but I think it's a really strong line. Do you have another line or?
No, I don't really have. I would stop kind of taking notes because I was so locked into the movie.
Yeah, I totally understand.
So I have stuff that I remember, but none that I've written down.
Yeah, and another one I really thought was really good is when he's talking to Ra's before he leaves the League of Shadows. And Ra's tells him, "Your compassion is a weakness your enemies won't share." And Bruce goes, "That's why it's so important. It separates us from them."
Yeah, and so good.
That's something that ultimately kills Ra's in the end, is Batman showing compassion of, "I won't kill you, but I'm also not going to save you," which is also the line at the end.
I mean, low key. Okay, I was watching the movie and he said that line, and then like as an older, I haven't watched this movie maybe since maybe 5 years or so.
Yeah.
Like, and I looked at it and I was like, I mean, technically you did kill him. Like you cut off the train, like you jumped out. And what was he going to do? He was hurt. You beat him up.
Yeah.
So, like, you kind of did kill him. Like, he kind of, like, that didn't make sense to me.
I mean, going back to what I said earlier with the college humor Batman stuff, they kind of go into that of Batman doesn't use guns and he doesn't kill. That's his one rule. But he also knocks people out probably to the point of them being unconscious and having brain damage and dying and all this stuff. But... it's the principle of Batman, you know?
It's the principle of Batman, yeah. The principle of Spider-Man would never.
No, definitely not.
Spider-Man would never. Why is my...
but that's a testament to Batman not being... He's a moral character, but it's in a place of darkness, and he has to embrace that darkness, and that's something we kind of see later on in Dark Knight Rises of being born out of the darkness and all that stuff that Bane says. You might have adapted it, but Bane lived through it and all that stuff. So it's something that doesn't just carry on within this movie, it's carried on within the through line. And I think that's really good job by Warner Brothers and Christopher Nolan for that.
I agree.
What are some of your favorite characters within this movie? I know there's, as we said earlier, the cast is great and all the characters are really good. Who for you really stood out?
It's got to be Commissioner Gordon because I know hindsight, because I know what's about to happen in the next movies, after this. So understanding where he starts off and having faith in Batman from the beginning, it allows their relationship to blossom right away. If he had fought back and if they spent the whole movie him not agreeing with him and they went into the next movie where he didn't really get I feel like that would have took away from them establishing themselves together, like, hey, we're going to fight crime. You're going to do it the justice way. I'm going to do it my way, but we're going to come to the same result. And he was kind of, as a cop in Gotham, you got to play dirty. I'm just I'm not trying to be cause I know we're in this time of, life right now, but we're talking about movies. So let's calm down here. We're talking about movies, but in Gotham, you got to do what you got to do. So teaming up with a vigilante who obviously has good intentions behind him and obviously wants to help out and wants to do things the right way, you do it, you sign up for it. So Gordon is essential in this movie's arc and next, obviously the trilogy's arc. So he's one of my favorites early on. If I can't pick Batman, obviously.
I think that was my issue too. I didn't want to pick Batman. I feel like that's the obvious answer within this. I think Gordon's a really great choice. Like you were saying, you know his ideals throughout hindsight. So this is kind of his introduction. You kind of get a feel for what he can
It's
be,
his
and
year
then
one too. It's his year
exactly
one.
when he's younger, when Bruce Wayne first comes in, when his parents die,
Yeah. Yep.
you could almost see that Gary Oldman is playing this younger version of himself and everything like that. And you know he's there for good, and you kind of see that good transpire by the time Batman becomes of age to be who he is. And it's a really nice arc, and he has some funny lines as well. You also get to see him use the tumbler and all this other stuff. So it's not like he's just this stagnant character that you get from something like a 89 Batman, where you just see him for a flash and he's gone. And he's a true character in this movie, and it's really nice to see. My character is Lucius Fox. To me, he's always the smartest man in the room.
Yep.
From a technological standpoint, from per se a economic standpoint, knowing where all the flow for that technology that he's building, where it goes and how to utilize it properly.
Mm-hmm.
And he coyly knows what Bruce is trying to do when he comes to him for all the suit with the Batmobile and everything like that. And he's like, I see what you're doing, and this is what we need right now. So I'll help you every step of the way. And it's really nice to see. It's the sidekick before the sidekick in a certain way. And he's a lovable character. He has his own quips and everything like that. I think Lucius and Morgan Freeman plays it really well.
Yeah, Morgan Freeman's a beast. Not even, I was about to say low key, high key, super high key.
Yeah, super high key.
Super high key. Not even willing to say high key, just he's a beast.
Before we go on to the ending of this movie, do you have any fun questions or tidbits you want to say about this movie?
Just that this movie, and I kind of hinted on it before, but with everything going on in the world, it's obviously okay. I think that everyone has an opinion and everyone wants to share. I'm not going to share my personal opinion. I'm just going to talk about how I thought this movie was very similar to what's going on right now. I mean, you look at Gotham, and Gotham's in shambles, and it's not just people, looting stores or stealing or, killing people on the street or, people who don't have a job, people who don't have a home are living on the street. You have, and we don't, obviously I don't know about the crime world or anything, but, you have Falcone running everything and polluting the streets, making it worse. And, you could say that there's a bunch of different things that cause that and a bunch of different things that can do that in real life. But I mean, you see what it takes to restore order. You see what it takes to get people to come together. It's unifying against a single force. It's not dividing each other. It's not, speaking badly on each other. It's believing in everyone and not judging someone because of anything that's not themselves. You know what I'm saying? It's not how they act or what they do. So, I mean, if you look at Gotham, if you look at this movie, I thought it was really cool looking at it like today, like right now with everything going on. I thought it was really cool to find some of those undertones and those similarities to what's going on all around the country right now.
Yeah, I think to speak to that, it's a testament how good this movie is, that it's still relevant years after the fact. And for a comic book movie to do that, I think is something that comic book movies kind of have this stigma of they're lesser because they're about comics and all that stuff. And this series was really the pivotal point of showing that these are real movies and not just these comic book things that nerds like. And it's telling you themes about justice. It's telling you themes about fear. And I think it does a really good job of handling those themes properly and showing it in a light that people could understand and get behind. And this movie's great. Christopher Nolan and all the cast and crew behind it, I think did a really good job at this.
Yeah, really good. Really good.
Now we go into the end of the movie where we see the bat signal for the first time, and we see what's to come for Batman, for Gotham, and for Gordon. And we see Joker's calling card, and that is a playing card Joker. He says he's already killed a couple people within Gotham. He's already plotting. He's already in motion within Gotham, and it's the start of his chaos. We finally get to see what's to come for Gotham with the Joker coming in. there's a lot of nice tidbits throughout the movie showing where this is going. And in hindsight, watching it back, you get to see different through lines come to fruition.
Mhm.
Crane doesn't get caught, so he continues to do things in both The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
And
He's like the Loki kind of like of this one. He kind of
yeah,
just keeps like he's there, just being a freaking gnat.
when you first watched this and you heard the Joker was coming, how excited were you? Obviously, it played out to the way we liked it. Has this trilogy lived up to the hype? Has this movie, Batman Begins, lived up to the hype?
I'm gonna spin it back on you. Is this the best trilogy of all time, superhero movie wise?
Okay,
Is
I
it?
think it's definitely top three. I agree with you. I think people can make arguments for something like a
Oh, you can
Captain
make arguments for
America
everything. Yeah.
and some other stuff. But as much as people don't like The Dark Knight Rises for whatever reason, you have to understand what obstacles that they actually went through to make that movie. They were
Yeah.
planning to keep the Joker in that movie,
Hmm.
but with the untimely and unfortunate passing of Heath Ledger, they had to kind of revamp what they were going to do. And they brought in Bane, they brought in a different storyline, and I think they executed it well considering the circumstances.
Yeah, you
You
have to
still
take
get
that
your
into account.
you still get your cast of characters, you still get a storyline, you still get certain panels out of comics too, the whole breaking of the back and things like that. From start to finish, the series is unbelievable.
Yeah, I agree. And to answer your question now, I think that this movie is very good. Like rewatching, I think I would give it. It definitely would get above an 8 for me. I don't know where I
Mm-hmm.
would necessarily. I would have to watch it for like specific things to like
Mm-hmm.
actually give it a score. But it's definitely in the upper echelon. It's definitely getting an 8 or higher, just off memory. And I think I think it's easily top 3 trilogy
Mm-hmm.
of movies. I think you can argue Captain America, just because like you get Winter Soldier and you
And
get
Civil War.
Civil War, like, and
Yeah,
that's insane to like include, like, and that's not fair to like. But we could have said the same thing about The Dark Knight Rises if the Joker was in it, because we can only imagine what that movie would have been like. Like, it would have been
exactly.
stupid. So, definitely think you put it up there with that kind of asterisk, like, Heath Ledger
Yeah,
passed away. So,
for sure.
but
A lot of people, I mean, from the stuff I've seen online, I'm very into the movie scene on YouTube and everything like that.
mhm.
So a lot of those people actually like Batman Begins more than The Dark Knight. It's a great origin movie. It doesn't lean on uh, the villain's performance as much
Yeah.
as The Dark Knight does, which could be a detriment or a good thing depending how you look at it. I think this is honestly one of the upper echelon comic book movies throughout the entire.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, yes, we got 78 Superman and everything, but the new age uh, superhero movies, I think this is near the top. You have The Dark Knight, you have this, you have Logan. There's a few MCU movies I'd put up there too. I would say this is top 10. And with Marvel putting out
22, 20.
24 movies at this point,
Yeah, now, yeah. I guess what, it's 25 of Black Widow, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
So that's speaking a lot to a franchise that's so beloved in Marvel, and taking one of these movies that kind of gets thrown away by certain people. It's still top 10. You can make an argument for even higher.
Yeah, agreed. 100%.
So, as we were saying, next week we are going to do The Dark Knight. Matt Bentley has been looking forward to this from me from years, and he's finally getting his wish.
It's going to be
Uh,
great.
this is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's in my top 5 movies of all time on IMDb. I believe it's number 4 all time.
Yeah.
So that's the fans voting for what their favorite movies are.
It's elite.
I'm very excited to do it. But for this video, that'll do it for us. Please be sure to tune in next week.
Yes.
If you can, put a like in this video. I've been getting likes on my Instagram. I'd rather a like on this video. Subscribe, share it with your friends. X, this was a great episode. Thank you for talking to us about Batman Begins.
Yes, sir.
And we'll catch you next time. Thank you.